Welcome back to NSEN. I'm here with Chris Burnett from the hot seat and Channing Martin. Obviously, the biggest sports news of the day is Peyton Manning's decision to sign with the Denver Broncos instead of the other two teams on his list. Chris, do you think that he made a good decision?
I do not. I strongly disagree with Peyton Manning's decision to go to Denver. I feel like the right decision for him would have been to come back to the state of Tennessee where it all started. Several things make me think this. First of all, Peyton was guaranteed a coaching job when he finished in a few years. You know, no one knows exactly when he's going to retire, but within a few years, Peyton Manning will no longer be playing football. He was already guaranteed a job coaching had he come here. Hutchinson, an offensive lineman, one of his Pro Bowl buddies, has already signed. That was a big deal here recently. He was even having a radio station, 107.5. The Peyton was going to be named after him. The fans were excited. The owner was excited. Bud Adams was into it. And not to mention, my biggest deal here is it's a homecoming for him. He's coming back to the state of Tennessee where it all started. He's coming back to Rocky Top where he spent his glory days here at the University of Tennessee. He's got the fan support. The city was behind him. Not to mention he's going to have Chris Johnson at running back, Jared Cook at tight end, and he's going to have Kenny Britt and Nate Washington both out at receiver. They've already got an offense that's been solidified for a year or so now. Jake Locker would have had the opportunity to learn from an experienced quarterback, and I feel like it was the wrong decision. I feel like he belonged here in the state of Tennessee.
Outside of the nostalgia feeling of a homecoming back to Tennessee, Channing, what do you think would have made the most football sense for Peyton Manning?
I'll agree with Chris. I think Tennessee would have been a better choice than Denver. But Tennessee sounds like it is a homecoming. Sounds like the fairy tale, you know. Peyton goes out winning a Super Bowl in Tennessee. You know, his wife's from Nashville. He's beloved forever in the state of Tennessee. But the best choice would have been the third team involved. It's San Francisco. They have Frank Gore, who's a proven running back, one of the best running backs in the NFL. Michael Crabtree, Vernon Davis, one of the best tight ends in the NFL. They have a receiving core. They picked up two receivers in the offseason, Mario Manningham and Randy Moss. And they have one of the top 5 defenses in the NFL, led by an up-and-coming coach that's as good as any coach in the NFL. So I think that Peyton could have won maybe 2 Super Bowls in the next 3 or 4 years in San Francisco, as opposed to Denver, where really he's got a subpar offensive line, terrible receiving core, 2 injury-prone running backs, a lackluster defense. So, I mean, I think San Francisco is the obvious choice.
I'm going to agree with you on a lot of that, but I'm going to disagree with you when you talk about the head coach. I think that Harbaugh is an excellent up-and-coming coach. I know that he's new. I know that he's excited. He's got it going on. But you're talking about Peyton Manning at the same time. Peyton Manning is someone that knows what he wants to do. He has a system that he's been running for a long time now in Indianapolis, and I think if he went out there to Harbaugh, who's new, I think he'd be trying to critique him. I think he probably wouldn't let him play his game to the style that he wants to do it, and I think that's probably a factor that Peyton Manning had. I don't know that Peyton Manning's much of a West Coast guy, born and raised in New Orleans, played football here in Tennessee, now he's lived in Indianapolis, and I feel like it was more here in Tennessee.
They could bump heads, but, I mean, he developed Andrew Luck. He took Alex Smith, they said was shot in the NFL, and look what Alex Smith did last year under Harbaugh. Okay. So he's a quarterback guy.
Okay. Peyton Manning's signing in Denver obviously brings into question what now happens with Tim Tebow, who was the starting quarterback in Denver last season, took them to the division title and a playoff win over Pittsburgh. Start with you, Channing. Where do you think Tim Tebow ends up after all of this?
Well, I think Tim Tebow got a raw deal. Obviously, you don't pass up a chance at Peyton Manning, one of the greatest quarterbacks that we've ever seen. He's from Jacksonville and a legendary Gator, legend in Florida. So I think that the Jacksonville Jaguars would be a good fit. Blaine Gabbert had a terrible year last year. Granted, it was his first year in the NFL, but Jacksonville's having trouble selling out. So send Tebow to Jacksonville, try to pick up a, first, second, third round pick in the draft, and maybe put some packages together for Tebow in Jacksonville. At least you'll sell jerseys and you'll sell out games. And Tebow could win there. I mean, he was 10-6 and 16 starts in Denver. Took him to the second round of the playoffs last year.
What about you, Chris?
Well, personally, I feel like the only thing Tebow would be selling in Jacksonville is going to be the jerseys and the tickets. I feel like you're right in the fact that he should go back to the state of Florida, but I feel like his opportunity might have been in Miami. So far, as of right now, Miami has missed on Matt Flynn and Peyton Manning. They're bringing in Alex Smith, as we know, to talk to him. They want to see what he has to say. They want to meet with him in person. But if that falls through, Miami is going into training camp here, or mini camps, should I say, here in April and May, without a quarterback. Tebow, who's from Florida, fans in Miami, there's still Gator fans down there. He has a following in the state of Florida. I think he could sell jerseys there also. He could sell tickets. And losing Brandon Marshall hurt. Right now, Miami Dolphins don't have a quarterback. So, a quarterback or a receiver. So you're talking about Tebow going down to Miami with the possibility of being able to run his offensive style of play while lacking a receiver.
Say what you want to about Tim Tebow. So you're saying send him from a team that had no talent around him, no receiving core, to potentially Jacksonville, Miami, who have no receiving cores and no talent around them. So Tim Tebow's getting a raw deal here. I mean,
So where do you think now that he would go to another team and become a starter, or do you think maybe he goes to a team that's got a veteran quarterback to where he can be a backup for a couple of seasons?
well, you'd like to have a backup quarterback that kind of fits a similar mold to your starting quarterback. So maybe Mike backup behind Mike Vick because Vick's an injury-prone quarterback because he's on the move. He's so mobile.
And Vince Young is a free agent.
And Vince Young is a free agent. So maybe Tebow's a decent fit. Andy Reid's a great quarterback mind.
Right.
Maybe develop Tebow for a few more years.
Well, it's going to take a few more years to develop Tebow, first of all, because I don't think he's ready to be a quarterback yet. I don't see it in him. I know that he's won games, and I know that he's back there running around for his life.
What else is there besides win? You said,
well,
I know he's won games.
Now, I will agree with you right now.
10-6.
I'll agree with you that he should probably go somewhere as a backup. But what I am going to say is that it does not need to be in a system where it's the same style quarterback. I think Tebow could be a good complement to an already evolved pocket passing quarterback. A Tom Brady, and I'm not saying he should go to New England, but a Tom Brady or somebody of that matter, I think Tebow would fit in well with a system like that because he can have his own
He took him to the second
deal.
round of the playoffs. He's not a complimentary quarterback.
He's a complimentary quarterback.
The only player in NFL history to have a better winning percentage in 16 starts is Tom Brady.
Right, and you're basing all of this off of one season.
16 starts is all he had. 10-6.
You're basing this off of one season.
Okay, guys. I think it's both clear that Tim Tebow does need work wherever he goes. He's not a polished quarterback right now. Completely switching gears, with March Madness in full effect, we saw some big upsets over the weekend. Brackets were busted all over America. What do you think was the biggest upset? And I'll go to you, Chris.
Well, I'm going to have to go with Duke. I think the Blue Devils choked, and not only did they choke, but they choked big time. Lehigh's upset of Duke, 75-70. In my opinion, the only word for that, guys, is embarrassing. I mean, there's no reason that should have happened. However, Duke came in, they missed their first 9 3-point attempts and played catch-up for most of that game. One thing that I do think that is important to note here is that their road win at UNC might have masked a lot of their problems that they may have had all along. They went on the road in a hostile environment. They had a difficult time with the Tar Heels at North Carolina, but they were able to pull out the win. And I think they could have still had problems, but they might have been masked and not have been seen because of that. One thing I do want to add is that Duke dropped their first tournament game for the first time in the past 16 years, and this game was just 55 miles from campus. Guys, there's no excuse for that.
Yeah, that is a big upset. It's a huge upset because this Duke's storied program. But Duke was young, and they didn't have a lot of momentum towards the end of the year. I think the biggest upset is Norfolk State over Missouri. Missouri was 30-3 coming into the tournament, and arguably the hottest team in all of college basketball. They beat Baylor 3 times. They won their conference tournament. They're a senior-laden team. And, I mean, a team that has the potential to win the national championship. Duke probably didn't have the potential to win the national championship. And Norfolk State dominated that game.
I think because of Duke's ongoing reputation, and we're talking about Duke. We're talking about a legendary powerhouse. There's no excuse for being young. There's no excuse for having inexperienced players. These guys come to Duke ready to play. That's why they're there. And
you can't argue with Coach K and their history. I mean, he's been to 16 Final Fours. He's got 4 national championships. But Missouri is a junior, senior-laden team, and they had a lot better chance to win the national championship than Duke did. So that's why I think that's a bigger upset. But that was Lehigh's first tournament win ever in their history of their program.
It is.
So they were both big wins.
It is, and you have to question whether or not Duke came into this game ready to play. I mean, like I said, you're 55 miles from campus. How are you not ready? This is March Madness. This is where it all starts. But they're looking at a lesser opponent that's not as talented as them. They're a little banged up, like I said, and I think maybe they just obviously let it slip through the cracks.
Well, let me say something about Norfolk State. They got beat by Florida by 34 last night. So how good could they have been? That ups the ante on how big of an upset that really was.
And it could have also come down to the fact was who was ready to play. Missouri might have come into this game just ready to play. I mean, as we can see, Duke, first 9 3-point attempts they missed. Everybody knows Duke makes the 3-pointers. They don't miss 3-point shots.
That's the beauty of college basketball. David can always beat Goliath.
They
get hot from 3, and you can beat anybody.
And you always have to be ready to play on any given night because especially when March Madness rolls around.
You can argue that you deserve to be the national champion.
No doubt. I'm not going to disagree with you there.
Only 3 times in the history before Friday night had a 15 seed beaten a 2. It happened twice on Friday night. March Madness at its best. We're going to take a break right now. We'll be back with more NSEN. Welcome back to your weekly sports fix, NSEN.
NASCAR was at Bristol Motor Speedway in Bristol, Tennessee this weekend, taking off to the fastest half mile. Brad Keselowski won the Food City 500 Sunday. This is the 2nd consecutive win at Bristol Motor Speedway, and it brings momentum to him with the opportunity making the chase for the 2nd consecutive season. The point system emphasis on wins more than just finishing races. The race was headlined by wrecks involving Jeff Gordon, whose tire went flat after contact from Dale Earnhardt Jr., a multi-car crash involving A.J. Allmendinger, Casey Kane, Marcos Ambrose, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Reagan Smith, and Carl Edwards. The rest of the top 10 were Matt Kenseth, Martin Truex Jr., Clint Bauer, Brian Vickers, Jeff Burton, Jamie McMurray, Juan Pablo Montoya, Jimmy Johnson, and Paul Menard. The next race is Sunday at 1:30 p.m. in the Auto Club 400 at Fontana, California.
The trade deadline in the NHL has come and gone, but the Nashville Predators may be close to adding another piece. Former Predator forward Alexander Radulov is in talks with his KHL club in Russia about a release from his contract, which would allow for his return to the NHL. NHL Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly announced last week that Radulov would not have to pass through waivers should he return to the NHL, clearing the way for an immediate return to Nashville. The 25-year-old Radulov last played for the Predators during the 2007-2008 season when he posted 58 points. This season in the KHL, Radulov had 63 points in just 50 games.
The Kentucky Wildcats flexed their muscles, showing the nation that they have the talent to be the last team dancing. The Wildcats dominated their first two opponents by a combined 31 points to advance to the Sweet 16. Kentucky has a very young roster, and critics say that their lack of experience could be their only downfall. What they lack in experience, they make up for in talent, and they are led by Anthony Davis, one of the nation's best players. Kentucky's size, speed, and talent is second to none in college basketball. They will get a chance to redeem an early season loss to Indiana next Thursday night. March Madness is under full swing with many brackets currently being upset. Duke, Michigan, and Missouri were all eliminated in the first round. For the second time ever, two 15 seeds won in the same tournament. Lehigh University won against Duke, giving them their first ever NCAA tournament victory. Norfolk State upset Missouri, who was one of the best teams entering the tournament. The Ohio Bobcats upset Michigan in the opening round and South Florida in the second round.
The Buckeye State is doing something no other state has done in the history of March Madness. For the first time ever, one state has 4 teams entering the Sweet 16. Ohio, Ohio State, Cincinnati, and Xavier have made it past the opening 3 rounds of the tournament. Only 3 out of the 4 teams will make it to the Elite 8. The matchup includes Ohio State against Cincinnati, Ohio against North Carolina, and Xavier against Baylor. The play of senior forward LaRon Dindy has been a big reason for the success of MTSU men's basketball team this season, and now the senior transfer is being honored in a big way. Dindy took first place in the fan voting for the Lou Henson Mid-Major Player of the Year award last week, edging out Creighton's Doug McDermott by a mere 58 votes. The fan vote counts for 1/3 of the final selection, and the winner of the award will be announced on March 30th in New Orleans. MTSU travels to play the University of Tennessee in the second round of the NIT tournament on Monday night. Channing, with all this talk about college basketball, I got to ask you, how's your bracket looking?
I threw my bracket out the window actually when I was driving over here today. My bracket's looking pretty terrible. Although I do have 2 Final Four teams left, but I'm sure they'll lose this weekend.
Not going to lie, I burned my bracket on Friday night, which has to be a new record. Second day of the tournament, I was already done with it.
Hey, in breaking news, Middle Tennessee State beat Tennessee tonight by 7 points in Knoxville to advance to the 3rd round of the NIT, and will play the winner of the Minnesota-Miami game. And if Minnesota beats Miami, they're a lower seed, so they'll come to the Murphy Center later on this week.
Wow.
The Middle Tennessee Blue Raider basketball team embarked on a late 15-0 run to overcome an 8-point deficit to continue their historic season with an impressive victory over in-state foe Tennessee. Bruce Massey led all scorers with 20 points and snagged 10 rebounds to mark his first double-double en route to MT's 71-64 victory. Bruce Massey scored a game-high 20 points despite only averaging 5 a contest. Senior LaRon Dindy nearly posted a double-double with 10 points and 9 rebounds while being limited with foul trouble for the entire contest. Middle Tennessee's victory earns the Blue Raiders another home game inside the historic Murphy Center on Wednesday night against Minnesota. Game time is slated for 6 p.m.
10 rebounds, too. I tell you, he's been unbelievable. There's a stat in college basketball that's really interesting. I think he's the only point guard in college basketball that has more blocks and steals than turnovers. And it's a great stat to keep on point guards. And shows toughness and gaining possessions, and that's what he did at the end. He just got us possessions. And then what he did that he hadn't done a lot was really attack the rim on a consistent basis.
So what does this 71-64 victory mean for the Blue Raiders? Well, next in line are the Minnesota Gophers inside Murphy Center Wednesday. This sets up a chance for MT to advance to the Final Four of the NIT and compete inside Madison Square Garden. Reporting for NSEN Sports, this is Justin Beasley.
It's great news for the Blue Raider fans. Hope you had a good sports fix tonight. For Channing Martin, I'm Brandon Haggany.
Have a good
See
night,
you
guys.
next week.